Get your questions in for Jeff Pasquino right now from the footballguys.com. Jeff Pasquino joins us every Thursday on the Sports Bash. Text Sports 609-403-0973 to ask Jeff your fantasy football questions right now. 609-403-0973. We'll gather all your questions. We'll ask them all to Jeff Pasquino. But Jeff, first, before we get to anything else, Jeff, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm ready for some interesting action tonight and also on Saturday.
Let's start with tonight, because tonight is a very interesting matchup. I know a lot of people have Raiders or Rams on their fantasy teams this year. So what are some things that you are looking for specifically from this game tonight?
Yeah, this game should be high scoring, reminiscent of the old AFC. It's projected to be Raiders 28, Chargers 25. So high scoring, big total there, 53 points. Justin Herbert is definitely a quarterback one this week and viable. Derek Carr is a borderline guy, but looking for a lot of throwing. Derek Carr is a little bit iffy, and the reason I say that is because we have Ruggs he's out for COVID. His top wide receivers are going to be Nelson Aguilar and probably Hunter Renfrow, who, like, Aguilar is a wide receiver 3. Renfrow is kind of a flex. Darren Waller is the number 2 tight end in the week, though, so he's definitely viable. And the running backs, Josh Jacobs and Austin Ekeler, who should be a go, is going to be your number ones. But the biggest news, aside from, as the receivers for the Chargers, we have Keenan Allen, who's very questionable. Mike Williams is going to be out. So my first waiver wire pickup, which everybody wants to hear about, Tyron Johnson, who stepped in for Keenan Allen, who went when he was injured last week. He was very active. He could be in line for a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 type performance tonight. So if you need wide receiver help, pick up Tyron Johnson. Don't be afraid to start him, especially in PPR leagues, along with Hunter Henry as well.
Now, you mentioned Herbert there. Herbert's had a very interesting year because he got really hot for a while there. He was one of those guys that everyone was trying to get their hands on. But then along the way, he cooled off a little bit. So now we're in the postseason. Now people are in the first, second, or even the finals of their fantasy football playoffs. How trustworthy is Justin Herbert if somebody has another quarterback to go to?
Yeah, Herbert's kind of more of a matchup-dependent guy, so he's had a couple of iffy matchups of late. But this one against the Raiders looks to be really good. I mean, he kind of slowed down when he played Buffalo and New England, but now he's playing Atlanta, Las Vegas, Denver. He's great matchups for the playoffs. He's got a great playoff schedule. He's definitely viable. Plus, he can run the ball himself.
You mentioned Tyler Johnson being a hot pickup for this week at the wide receiver position. Do you honestly believe that wasn't a 1 week thing? Like he is a guy that can kind of be one of those boom guys.
It's really about the availability of the other wide receivers and the matchup. Tyron Johnson is capable. He's going to see at least probably 8 to 10 targets. Him and Hunter Henry are pretty much all they have for the Chargers. This time of year, some teams are really scraping the bottom of the barrel, and the guys that can play the field, one of the best abilities is availability. So Tyron Johnson is available. The Raiders are a bad pass defense, so he's definitely a fantasy playoff option this week.
What about that Saturday slate? What guys on that day? I'm a DraftKings guy, so I'm one of those guys. I put one of those big lineups in just for the whole day. Is there any sleepers that day that I can kind of sneak into the back end of those lineups to get me some, some good cash?
Yeah, I think that the guys you're going to be looking for, I think Zach Moss for Buffalo is a tight end sleeper. You never know if he's going to get in the goal line for Buffalo, and they should be favored to win that game at Denver. They're very banged up. Wide receiver, I'd watch to see if John Brown's going to be active. Gabriel Davis has been scoring a lot for Buffalo, but John Brown could be back. Noah Fant's always an option as a flex for Denver, but the wide receivers are a mess there. The tight end I like on that Saturday slate is Robert Tonyan for Green Bay. I think he's probably your number one tight end on the week, and he's a top 10 tight end overall for the entire week.
Get your questions in for Jeff Pasquino now at 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Your fantasy football questions for Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com. Jeff, a couple interesting injury-related news things that have already been coming out. This situation with Drew Brees, all of a sudden now he's taking first-team reps today at practice, even though the team wasn't going to confirm whether he would start or not. So, how are you going to treat this New Orleans quarterback situation?
If I'm relying on Taysom Hill, I'm worried because the Saints don't really care about your fantasy team. They're trying to get ready for the playoffs. So they're probably going to – they know that Hill can weather the load at the quarterback spot if Brees can't go, but it may be completely reversed to when Brees was starting, where they bring Hill in now and then. They may bring Brees in now and then to treat it kind of like getting some warm-ups for the postseason run. So that's going to lower Hill's numbers. I think both will be used, which makes them both quarterback twos in the week for a tough matchup. But normally it'd be a high-scoring throw Brees out there, but not when he's not 100%.
609-403-0973 on the text board for your questions for Jeff Pasquino for the footballguys.com. Another news item that came out today, Antonio Gibson, he worked on the side at practice for Washington today, but without him in the lineup, McKissick didn't have a huge fantasy day that maybe some people hoped for. So how are you looking at the Washington running back situation?
For me, it's almost an entire fade. Peyton Barber is no best than a running back 3, but he cuts in McKissick value. McKissick value is solid for PPR leagues because he's going to see plenty of targets for the short passing game because that's all about all the amount of time they're going to have. But Seattle's a very good defense against the run, and they're going to put pressure against bad teams. And Washington's a mediocre team at best. I know they're 6-7, but they're kind of the best of the worst in the NFC East.
Jeff, last week we talked about Jalen Hurts and his value fantasy-wise. Now, he didn't have a big day throwing the ball, but he did have over 100 yards rushing. What do you see for him this week against that Arizona front seven?
A lot of people are big on Hurts this week, and I may use him in a start 2 quarterback league, but not in a QB1. And the reason is that this is a must-win for Arizona. They have to win this week, and they have to beat San Francisco next week to really get into the playoffs because the Rams loom in Week 17. So Arizona's back home. It's a much tougher defense than the Saints, and the Saints had not a lot of game film on Jalen Hurts. So they were learning as they went throughout that game. Arizona's going to put pressure on him. They're going to try and, put some advanced looks for Hurts to throw some interceptions. The Eagles won that game last week on turnovers as well. So Hurts did play okay to above average, but he's no more than a QB2 for fantasy purposes this week.
On the other side of the ball, Kyler Murray against this Eagles defense. And listen, they let Daniel Jones look like the next coming to Michael Vick. Is Kyler Murray in for a big day running the football at the quarterback position?
Again, same kind of story here. Arizona's in a must-win spot. I expect DeAndre Hopkins to have a big game. They've been using the tight end there, Arnold, a lot. Philadelphia's going to have to get some luck with some turnovers, but I think Kyler Murray is forecasted as a top 5 quarterback this week.
Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com joining us right now on the Boardwalk on a hotline. We're compiling your questions right now at 609-403-0973. Your fantasy football questions here on a Thursday with Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com. 609-403-0973 on the text board. Staying on the offensive skill positions, we know that, for example, James Robinson was limited at practice on Wednesday. Is he a guy that you are going to keep an eye on as the week progresses?
Yes, as long as he's a go, you got to use him. But it's a tough matchup against the Ravens, who are basically in a win-out situation where they must win games like this. The game script should not be favorable for Robinson, but he does catch balls out of the backfield. As long as he's 100%, he should be a top 24 back, but it won't be that great of a performance.
Overall, when you look at the tight end position, you mentioned Tunyon for Saturday, but outside of the big names like Travis Kelce and guys like that, it's been a real tough year for tight ends. What are you saying to people as they're entering their fantasy football weekend? Because Tunyon's been hit or miss, Gronk has been hit or miss, Ebron's been hit or miss. It feels like unless you have Travis Kelce or someone of that caliber, you're basically just hoping for the best at this point.
Yeah, that's pretty much the truth. I think Tanyon's been a nice find for end zone looks. Mark Andrews is up and down with his health right now. The guy that's really been helping a lot of people is T.J. Hockenson in Detroit. He seems to be producing a lot. If you're in need of a tight end, and it's probably not going to help you this week because he's iffy, but he could be on a lot of waiver wires, which is George Kittle. He's definitely a top 5 tight end when healthy. San Francisco just activated him to come off the 21-day injury list. So if he's available, it's worth picking up just in case he's available next week.
Let's get your questions at 609-403-0973. Your fantasy football questions for NFL Week 15, 609-403-0973. Jeff, let's start with this question from a texter. They're asking Raheem Mostert or Giovanni Bernard for running back.
You're going to have to go Bernard in that situation because Mostert is banged up and he may not even play. So it's actually you're bringing me to one of my guys to pick up, which is Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson, probably backed up by McKinnon, but Wilson is the guy if he's on the waiver wire. Go pick him up. It's a great matchup for the 49ers in the run game. Mostert could be inactive, which makes Wilson a top 15 running back.
It's funny you mentioned Wilson because the next person who has another running back question, Jeff Wilson or Austin Ekeler?
I like them both, and I think if Ekeler is active and ready to go, it's a good matchup tonight. So I would use Ekeler, and I wouldn't be afraid to use both of them in your lineup this week if Mostert is out.
Texter wants to know Derek Carr or Ben Roethlisberger?
I think Carr's going up. He's got a weak wide receiver core this week, and it's a bad matchup for the Chargers. I think I got to go with Big Ben against the Cincinnati Bengals, and in a game the Steelers should walk over them.
Texter has a flex opening. They want to know, should they go JuJu or CeeDee Lamb?
Both of the guys are PPR favorites, so I think that you're looking at a game script. So Dallas is going to throw the ball more, so I like Lamb a little bit more over JuJu, and there's a lot of guys that catch the ball for Pittsburgh, so slightly favor Lamb this week.
609-403-0973. Your fantasy football questions for Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com. Running back, I need to pick one of these three. His options are Johnson from Houston, Phillip Lindsay, or should they pick up Adrian Peterson? Apparently he's on his waiver wire.
I would go with David Johnson just on volume. I think Lindsey's going to split time. He's banged up, and he's going to split time with Gordon. ADP is losing time to the rookie and Swift. David Johnson's not a great matchup for Houston against the Colts, but he's going to see a bulk of the work, and they need also guys to catch the ball in the backfield, and Johnson can do that too.
Calvin Ridley or Robbie Anderson? That's an interesting one.
That is an interesting one. I really like the Carolina passing game. I think Robbie Anderson, believe it or not, is the top 20 guy. Calvin Ridley is right there too, but I would lean a little bit towards Anderson. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to flip that. Calvin Ridley is just too good. I think he's a wide receiver 1, but Anderson is viable as a wide receiver 2. Both are starter. They are both startable this week.
Amari Cooper or Tyler Lockett?
Tyler Lockett for Seattle against Washington. Yeah, Washington's suspect against the passing game. It seems to alternate. Metcalf had a big game last week, so this seems to be the Lockett's week this week.
Couple more from the listeners, 609-403-0973. Your questions for Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com. Another quarterback question, Tom Brady or Kyler Murray?
Kyler Murray, I think he's just it's a good matchup for both. Brady gets Atlanta, but Murray's in a must-win against Philly, and that's a good matchup too. I like Murray a little bit more.
Speaking of the tight end, person wants to know, should they go with Eric Ebron or TJ Hockenson?
I like Hockenson against Tennessee. Anytime that Detroit is missing Galloway a lot, so Hockenson is kind of the crutch for that. And Detroit's also banged up a quarterback, so Hawkinson's going to see a lot of targets this week.
Here's an interesting one for you. I don't think we've ever gotten a kicker question before. Mason Crosby or Will Lutz?
I think I would go with Mason Crosby because Green Bay's at home against Carolina. They're favored. You always want to go with a kicker at home. Hopefully he's in good weather. And if they're favored in the game, they're kicking field goals at the end, and that's what you want.
Let's get two more for Jeff Pasquino at 609-403-0973. Thielen or Jefferson? So you got both Vikings. That's interesting.
Usually you go with Thielen. He's definitely the number one guy. He sees much more targets. Justin Jefferson's right there with him, but I would go with Thielen just for reliability.
And one more, and back to the quarterback position. He needs to pick one of these three. Herbert tonight, Deshaun Watson, or Taysom Hill?
Well, we talked about Hill earlier being a little iffy. I would actually take Deshaun Watson there against the Colts. The Colts, strong against the run, bad against the pass, and Houston's supposed to be down in that game. So game script dictates they're going to have to throw the ball. So Deshaun Watson's the pick.
All right, Jeff, before we let you go, your picks and sleepers for NFL Week 15.
Okay, the waiver wire pool is a little thin, but we've got a couple names here. I'll mention them again. Tyron Johnson for the Chargers tonight should be a starter, should be viable. Pick him up. Also a name this is a guy that's some leagues he's a running back, some leagues he's a wide receiver. He's viable for both, especially in PPR leagues. Lynn Bowden Jr. for Miami. They are really banged up. If Devontae Parker is scratched or Jakeem Grant is out, Bowden saw 9 targets last week and had 7 catches for 82 yards, so pick him up. Running back, I got 3 for you. We've got Leonard Fournette could be leading the backfield for Tampa Bay in a favorable matchup against Atlanta. We mentioned Jeff Wilson earlier, probably a starter. And lastly, DeAndre Washington for Miami. They are also banged up. Good matchup against the Patriots this week.
All right, there you go. Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. NFL Week 15 starts tonight, Thursday football, right here on 97.3 ESPN. As our guest, Jeff appeared on the Boardwalk High, the hotline. Great stuff today, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Good luck, everybody. Enjoy the games.
Josh Henning along with Deshaun Hendricks here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, our fantasy football conversation with Jeff Pasquino is brought to you by the Piccalilli Inn. Be sure to call the Pick for your game day favorites like their award-winning wings, ears, and tails. Check them out online at piccalilli.com